The diamond earrings caught the fluorescent lights as she tossed her hair back dismissively. Can we speed this up? I have a lunch reservation. Victoria Ashford, 23 years old, wasn't asking. She was scrolling through her phone, one leg crossed over the other, speaking to the bench like I was customer service. I set down my pen. Miss Ashford, this is a courtroom. Put the phone away and address the charges. She glanced up barely. I'm here, aren't I? Isn't that enough? Her attorney, David R. Hale, stood quickly. Your Honor, my client is prepared to pay any applicable fines and resolve this matter today. Mr. Hale, sit down. This court is not a payment portal. The words came out quiet, but they landed hard. David Hale hesitated, then sat. I tapped my pen once. Officer Dantas, confirm we have body cam audio activated. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Subscribe if you missed Judge Caprio. This one gets uncomfortable. The clerk stepped forward. Case number 24-10847, Commonwealth versus Victoria Marie Ashford. Charges: unauthorized use of an accessible parking space for disabled van access, destruction of a citation, failure to appear on 3 citations, contempt for prior failure to appear. Officer Leah Romano of Parking Enforcement issued citation on Wednesday at 9:42 a.m. I leaned forward. Miss Ashford, did you receive copies of the 3 citation notices mailed to your residence? My assistant handles the mail. That's not what I asked. Did you receive them? I guess so. You guess, Miss Ashford? I turned to the clerk. Miss Reyes, do we have delivery confirmation? The clerk nodded. Yes, Your Honor. 3 certified notices, all signed for at the defendant's residence. I flipped a page. There's also a notation here. Prior parking enforcement notice from campus 14 months ago. Miss Ashford blocked a loading zone at Brown University for over an hour during a catering delivery. Not a criminal matter, but context for judgment. Miss Ashford, what happened at that incident? Victoria shrugged. I don't remember. Probably nothing. The report says you told the attendant, my family donated the library. This isn't punishment for today. It's a pattern. David Hale tried again. Your Honor, my client acknowledges she could have handled this better. She's willing to pay the fines and move forward. Mr. Hale, paying a fine teaches nothing except how to write a check. I want to understand what happened. Miss Ashford, walk me through Wednesday morning. Victoria exhaled audibly, annoyed. I parked in front of a pharmacy on Hope Street. I was inside maybe 10 minutes. When I came out, there was a ticket on my windshield. I tore it up. I didn't think it was valid. You parked in a disabled van accessible space. Nobody was using it. That's not the point. You parked in a space marked with the International Access symbol and diagonal striping, correct? Yes, but it was empty. No harm, no foul. Miss Ashford, harm isn't just collision, it's denial. Let me read you a line from a written statement filed by Laura Bennett, a mother who arrived at that pharmacy at 9:51 a.m. Quote, the ramp couldn't deploy. My daughter missed her therapy window, end quote. Victoria waved her hand. That's not my fault. She could have parked somewhere else. David Hale objected. Your Honor, we're introducing emotional context that's not material to the citation. Counselor, denial of access is the material fact. Miss Bennett's daughter uses a wheelchair. She couldn't access the building because your client blocked the only van accessible space. That's not emotional. That's factual harm. I turned to the officer standing near the side wall. Officer Romano, please read your account for the record. Officer Leah Romano stepped forward, calm and precise. At 9:42 a.m., I observed a silver luxury sedan parked in a van-accessible space in front of Hope Street Pharmacy. The space was properly marked with signage and diagonal access striping. The vehicle had no disabled placard or plate. I issued a citation and placed it on the windshield. At 9:53 a.m., I observed the driver, subsequently identified as Victoria Ashford, exit the pharmacy, remove the citation from the windshield, tear it in half, and discard it onto the sidewalk. I approached and informed her of the violation. She said, "This is ridiculous." Do you know who I am? When I explained the citation was valid, she said, "Then write another one. My family funds this city." I paused. Officer Romano, did you perceive that statement as intimidation? Yes, Your Honor. Victoria leaned forward. That was sarcasm. I was annoyed. Let's hear it. Officer Dantas, play the body cam audio, just the relevant conversation. A brief hiss of static. Then Victoria's voice clipped and dismissive. My family funds this city. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Miss Ashford, your father is Marcus Ashford, founder of Ashford Innovations, correct? Yes. And your family has made significant philanthropic contributions to Providence, including municipal projects, correct? Yes. And when you said, my family funds this city, what did you mean? I meant we support the community. Officer Romano, how did you interpret it? As influence, Your Honor? An implied consequence for writing the citation. Sarcasm doesn't lower ramps, Miss Ashford. I turned to my clerk. Miss Reyes, was this court contacted regarding this case before today's hearing? The clerk checked the log. Yes, Your Honor. 2 incoming calls and 1 voicemail, all from a number registered to Ashford Innovations Donor Relations. Timestamps. First call 10:18 a.m. Second call 10:47 a.m. Voicemail left at 11:12 a.m. We also received an email from a civic philanthropy liaison at 10:52 a.m. referencing discrete resolution. Read the email for the record. The clerk read. Case 24-10847 resolution. Body. We understand a citation was issued to an Ashford family member this morning. Given the family's long-standing support for municipal initiatives, we'd like to discuss options for resolving this matter quietly and efficiently before it proceeds. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. David Hale was on his feet. Your Honor, my client is not responsible for communications from her family's foundation. This is irrelevant. Overruled. Pressure on process is relevant when documented. I'm not accusing anyone of criminal conduct. I'm documenting facts in the record. Victoria shifted in her seat. I didn't ask them to call. Perhaps not. But someone thought it would help. Let me trace a timeline. Citation issued at 9:42 a.m. First call from Ashford Innovations at 10:18. That's 36 minutes. Email sent at 10:52 a.m. Someone move fast. I looked back at the clerk. Is Miss Laura Bennett available for a brief statement? She is, Your Honor, by phone. Put her through. A woman's voice, steady but strained, filled the speaker. Thank you, Your Honor. My daughter has cerebral palsy. She receives physical therapy twice a week. Wednesday was a critical session. We arrived at the pharmacy at 9:51 to pick up her medication before therapy. The van-accessible space was blocked. I couldn't deploy the side entry ramp. By the time we found another spot and got inside, we'd lost the first 20 minutes of therapy. The therapist had to reschedule. Access is infrastructure. It's not optional. Victoria muttered something under her breath. I caught it. Miss Ashford, if you have something to say it clearly. I said it was 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a therapy window, Miss Ashford. Miss Bennett, thank you. Your statement is on record. The line clicked off. I picked up another document. Miss Reyes, these are the 3 citation notices mailed to Miss Ashford's residence. Can you confirm delivery? Yes, Your Honor. First notice mailed October 2nd, signed for October 4th. Second notice mailed October 16th, signed for October 18th. Final notice mailed October 30th, signed for November 1st. All 3 signed by either V, Ashford, or per V. Ashford. Victoria's jaw tightened. My assistant signs things. But you knew, correct? I don't read every piece of mail. Miss Ashford, 3 certified notices in 4 weeks. That's not oversight, that's pattern. David Hale stood again, slower this time. Your Honor, given the Ashford family's role in municipal philanthropy, we request that the remainder of this hearing be handled off the public calendar. Public proceedings could create unnecessary complications for ongoing civic partnerships. Mr. Hale, sunlight is justice. We're staying on record. I looked at Victoria with a calm, steady gaze. I'm going to ask you 3 yes or no questions. Did you park in a disabled van-accessible space without authorization? Yes. Did you tear up the citation and discard it? Yes. Did you ignore 3 citations? Victoria hesitated. I didn't think they were serious. That's not a no. Did you ignore them? Yes. Your Honor, this is absurd. Victoria's voice rose. My family has donated millions to this city. We fund programs. We support infrastructure. You wouldn't have half your budget without us. Miss Ashford, donations don't purchase exemptions. They should purchase some respect. Do you know how much my father contributes to municipal operations? Your salary is paid by taxpayers like us. David Hale stood quickly. Your Honor, my client is, I own you. The words hung in the air. 5 seconds. 7, 10, 12. That was the moment money ran out of jurisdiction. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Victoria stared at the bench, realizing too late what she'd said. David Hale's face went pale. Officer Romano stood motionless near the wall. Then I spoke, quietly. Miss Ashford, you own nothing in this courtroom. Not the process, not the outcome, not me. Here's my finding. The evidence supports all 4 charges. Officer Romano's account is credible and corroborated by body cam audio, lot security camera photos, the torn citation, 3 confirmed delivery citation notices, and the timeline of Foundation calls and emails. Miss Ashford parked in a disabled van access space, denying critical access to a family with mobility needs. She destroyed a citation. She ignored 3 citations over 4 weeks. She invoked her family's financial contributions in a manner Officer Romano reasonably perceived as intimidation. I paused. This court doesn't adjudicate cases based on wealth, donations, or family foundation contacts. Loaned money is not loaned authority. Miss Ashford, your family's philanthropy doesn't grant you ownership over public process. Your status doesn't erase harm. Access is not up for auction. I turned a page. I also take note of the prior campus parking notice. That notice was instructive, not punitive. You were told once that loading zones matter. You chose not to internalize that lesson. Consequences teach what privilege obscures. The base fines total $750. Unauthorized use of disabled space, $300. Contempt for failure to appear, $300. Administrative costs, $150. Victoria exhaled sharply. I raised a hand. I'm not finished. I'm holding $400 of that total, subject to your full and timely completion of a restorative accountability plan. If you complete it, that portion is remitted. If you don't, it reinstates and you pay the full amount. Here's what the plan requires. First, written apologies to Officer Leah Romano and Laura Bennett. Not formal letters drafted by your family's public relations team. Real apologies that name what you did and what you learned. You'll deliver them in person if both agree to meet with you. If either declines, you'll mail them and the court will confirm receipt. Second, 150 hours of community service split between 2 organizations, 75 hours at the Rhode Island Food Bank, 75 hours at the Mobility Access Coalition, assisting with accessibility audits and community outreach. Both organizations will file attendance logs with the court, no press releases, no photo opportunities. Third, you'll draft and record 2 public service announcements for school distribution, both approved by the court, about access equity and the difference between charity and right. Fourth, you'll complete a module on donor influence ethics covering the separation between philanthropy and public process. Completion certification will be filed with the court. Fifth, you'll submit a 900-word written reflection on the topic of money versus authority, not slogans crafted by a communications team. Raw truth. In your own words, I set down the pen. Mercy isn't a discount, it's a contract. Additionally, I'm making the following recommendations on record to municipal court administration and the mayor's office. 1. Establish an ex parte influence log for all cases. Any unlogged contact attempt, even from donors or their representatives, will be documented and published weekly. 2. Create a donor contact firewall with required disclosure. Any case involving a defendant whose family has made significant municipal donations must be flagged, and any contact from donor-related entities must be disclosed immediately. 3. Implement mandatory co-signature and supervisor recusal protocols. If a donor representative contacts a court staff member regarding a pending case, that staff member must recuse or obtain supervisor clearance. 4. Develop first tow disabled bay escalation. Unauthorized vehicles in van-accessible spaces should trigger immediate tow protocols to minimize access denial. 5. Create a municipal public service announcement series about access rights featuring real testimonies from families who rely on accessible infrastructure. 6. Establish an employee influence attempt hotline. Any effort to leverage donations, connections, or wealth can be reported anonymously. Each report will be investigated. Subscribe to Judge Caprio. This blueprint protects the system. Over the following 12 weeks, Victoria completed the plan piece by piece. First week, she drafted the apology. The court rejected it as too polished, clearly written by someone else. She tried again in her own words. Better. Officer Romano agreed to meet with her at a coffee shop near the courthouse. The conversation was brief, awkward, and necessary. Romano told her, "When you said your family funds the city, you made me feel like my job was for sale. It's not. Laura Bennett accepted the written apology but declined the in-person meeting. She emailed the court. She named what she took from us. That's enough. Weeks 2 through 10, Victoria logged 150 hours at both organizations. At the food bank, she sorted donations, stocked shelves, helped with distribution logistics. No press, no cameras. A volunteer coordinator said, "Service isn't about who sees you doing it." At the Mobility Access Coalition, she assisted with accessibility audits at local businesses, learned how ramp angles and door widths are calculated, and staffed community outreach visits. A wheelchair user told her, "Your access isn't a favor, it's a right." Week 9, she recorded the public service announcements. The first drafts were too corporate, too scripted. The court sent them back. She re-recorded them with clarity. No branding, no family mentions, just her voice and the truth. The second versions passed. The donor influence ethics module took another 3 weeks. She completed it without complaint. The ledger was straightforward. 150 hours logged, 2 PSAs approved, 1 firewall established, 1 interrupted, right documented. Officer Romano told the court she showed up every time. That matters. Subscribe if you're over 50 and miss Judge Caprio. Should every wealth-based intimidation case include mandatory service? Tell us below. 12 weeks after the initial hearing, Victoria returned to court. This time she came alone. No attorney, no family representative, no entourage. I reviewed the filed documents, the apologies, the service logs, the PSA recordings, the module certificate, the written reflection. Miss Ashford, I've read your reflection. I'd like you to summarize it in your own words. No script, Victoria stood. I thought money meant access. I thought because my family donated to programs, I could park where I wanted, ignore tickets, skip court dates. I thought if we funded things, it meant I owned them. I didn't understand that public office isn't for sale, it's for service. She paused. When I told you that you were mine, I was wrong. I don't own anything except my own choices. Money can build a library, but it can't buy me out of blocking someone's ramp. I blocked Miss Bennett's daughter from accessing therapy. I told Officer Romano her job was for sale. Both things were wrong. What did you learn from Officer Romano? That public servants aren't employees of my family's foundation. They serve the community, not individual donors. When I used our donations as leverage, I tried to corrupt that. What did you learn from the Mobility Access Coalition? That accessible parking isn't a convenience issue. It's about ramp angles, clearance widths, transfer space. When I blocked that space for 10 minutes, I didn't just delay someone. I denied them access to medication. Time is infrastructure. I nodded. You stopped trying to own the system and started learning to respect it. I signed a form. I'm remitting $350 of the held portion. You still owe $400 total. You'll pay it in installments over 6 months. The court will monitor your compliance. As a reminder, Miss Ashford, access is not up for auction. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Thank the people who taught you what I couldn't. 5 months later, the policies took root. The court published its first ex parte influence log. 3 donor contact attempts were recorded in the first month, all handled transparently under the new firewall protocol. Court staff reported feeling protected by the disclosure requirements. The donor contact firewall was adopted across municipal courts. Cases involving major donor families are automatically flagged. Co-signature supervisor protocols were implemented without incident. The first tow-disabled bay escalation became citywide. Average release time for unauthorized vehicles dropped 47%. Complaints from wheelchair users decreased significantly. The municipal PSA series launched, featuring real testimonies from families who rely on accessible infrastructure. Victoria's recordings were included, distributed to 31 schools. They weren't viral. They weren't celebrated. But they were used, and that was enough. One parent emailed the court, "My son saw the PSA about accessible spaces and asked why people blocked them. We had a real conversation about access being a right, not a privilege. Thank you." On a quiet Friday afternoon, I finished my last case of the week. Before leaving, I wrote a single principle on a card and pinned it to the bulletin board behind my bench. Public office is not for sale, it's for service. I thought about Victoria Ashford, about Officer Romano standing in a parking lot with someone's wealth thrown in her face, about Laura Bennett's daughter waiting in the van while therapy minutes ticked away. I turned off the light and closed the door. Dramatization for storytelling and education, not legal advice or reporting.